right, everyone, welcome back to a Grit Daily Startup Show. I'm your host. Again, you keep seeing me often, and I love hearing from you guys. Jordan French, love hearing from you guys. So appreciate all your emails that we're getting, the social commentary. Feel free to comment away, because especially our guest here for this episode, Gaurav Bhattacharya with Jeeva AI. He welcomes that too, isn't that right, Gaurav? You welcome the discourse, you welcome the commentary, no matter how
Totally.
challenging it might be from this audience.
I totally agree. And a funny story about me is I'm a sucker for YouTube comments. I love watching comments. If I see a funny like a video, then I always check like the first or the second comment. The first comment is usually like a summary and a great like a genuine, and the second one is like the funniest comment, and I'm a sucker for those. So absolutely, 100%.
Same. I think there's a term for it, and we can talk about this just a little bit, and get to GVAI because I know this audience is super keen, interested on the virality of it and sort of the breakdown of elements and even just the
Sure.
philosophy. But there's a term for it. It's people sprint to the comments
Oh yeah.
because uh, they they throw everything and run because often, and I think I'll ask it as a question. Do you not also find some of the most hilarious people
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
commenting on some video, absolutely trolling whoever posted it, uh, trolling whoever posted it, and/or the hyperbole, the
Hmm.
the analogies that they'll use, the
Yeah.
metaphors are absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious, Gaurav.
I agree. I agree. I totally agree with you, and I feel like it's like it brings out the most human creativity
Yeah, so
in
for all you
people.
humans and bots,
Yeah.
if there's bots listening to you, we're totally fine with it. If you're building scripts and they're listening to, we don't care. Sprint to the comment section, comment away. Especially when Gaurav, he welcomes it. You can
I
troll me
totally love
all
that.
you want,
Please do.
challenge everything that we say. We love it. I like to think about things differently. I love to know when I'm holding a conventional wisdom, Gaurav, and I'm told, hey, you might be wrong about that. But speaking of which, you know, you're here. Let me paint a bit of a backdrop.
Mm,
We've we're immersed with this word, AI. That was on a relative basis pretty scarce, like
mm,
maybe 3-ish years ago. OpenAI can like burst that open, at least from like a narrative media standpoint. Now we're sort of seeing it kind of everywhere. We've seen a litany of companies crop up, and usually, and let me give you the first conventional wisdom.
yeah.
Usually, it's just roadkill. Everyone's sort of starting a company,
Sure.
and they don't make any revenue.
That's right.
Hardware or whatever, this new thing and printing this.
Mhm.
And I would know. I've done it too.
Yeah.
Um, and it takes a long time. But here you are, and I want to drop this. I will
Hmm.
throw the grenade right at everyone.
For sure.
7 months in, 5 million ARR.
Hmm.
That's unquestionably a wildly successful company out of the gate.
Thank you.
In the AI space. So let's unpack that for the audience. We're already super curious, bro.
Yeah.
Share like what exactly is it that people are buying to just eat up and get you to that point so quickly? And then it's also the other fact you've hardly done any marketing or none
Mm.
to get there. So this is something that people are rabid about. Tell us more. Let's dig right in, Gaurav.
Yeah, totally. Jordan, great question. I'll give a quick summary of what Jiva AI does. And what we do is we're building like an agentic AI for sellers and sales. So like a simple analogy would be, I think we were talking about this before the show, Cursor or Windsurf or GitHub Copilot. These are like code gen solutions that software engineers use. And the goal is like, we're not trying to replace engineers. We're trying to make them 5 times better, 10 times better. I use it every day. I feel like as an engineer, I'm much better. So when we saw that, we were using it so often, and we were actually jealous of the growth these guys were having. And what we wanted to do was we were like, man, we should do this for sales. I think there's a big opportunity. There's more salespeople than actual software engineers. And wouldn't it be cool if we built something really cool in natural language, like a GPT experience? But instead of just like saying, do research on this company, I can actually say, go find all the decision makers, go find their emails and their cell phones, write a hyper personalized email sequence, LinkedIn message sequence for me, and just ping me in the morning when they respond, and I can take over. So that was like the hypotheses we had. Obviously, it does different things and better things things now, but that's what we started with and that's what we're doing. So everything from all the things that sellers do that are not having like a discovery call or a demo or carrying out the sales cycle, which is actually like the interactive, creative part of like the sale, the negotiation. We don't think AI is anywhere closer to replacing that. But the manual repetitive aspects like finding leads, enriching data, personalized outreach, we believe AI can do better, faster, cheaper, and that's what we're doing with Jeeva AI.
That's really cool, I think, for all of us to hear, because I'll go out on a limb and say like pretty much everyone listening
Yeah.
sells like in some
Yes,
way.
everyone is in
Always
sales.
the
Yeah.
first, yeah. There's always like a first touch point, and it brings us back to maybe I don't know the last century, and it's formalized a bit, but kind of the concept of an SDR and just
Yeah.
how highly uncertain that space is.
Yeah.
It's sort of an expensive hire,
It's
but
expensive.
also there's enormous amount of variance,
Hmm.
right? Of
Yeah.
variance in sort of
Yeah.
people's capabilities, and
Mm.
sometimes it's not the people themselves;
Yeah.
it's the industry that they're in that's nuanced.
I
So,
completely agree.
so what changed in sort of the tech or like coding sphere that
Sure.
allows you to do this now rather
Yeah.
than I don't know, let's pick a year or date like 5 years ago, right? We could have used this; it would be awesome to have. What
Yeah.
what, what changed, Gaurav? Like what
Yeah.
got invented? So, or what did you what
Sure.
sort of amalgamated to make it so that AI is overcame that threshold and can do some of these things better than us humans.
Yeah, totally. Jordan, so there's a few things that are happening in our industry in particular that some are AI related, some are like non-technology related. Let me start with the easier one, which is the non-technology aspects, because I think that's very important for how the market adapts. I believe if we had built something like this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even with the best possible tech, it wouldn't have worked. And I'll tell you why. What I believe is that at least in the 90s, how sales worked was, right? Like we would have one salesperson and they would go hunt. They would basically then close their deals, manage their book of business, do implementation, onboarding, everything. Then software kind of screwed it up for everybody because the
Mhm.
software industry came and SaaS came and there's all these like Silicon Valley companies and it came with super specialization of roles, which is a good thing and a very bad thing for individuals too. And I'll tell you why. Because what it did was it created these highly specialized roles like an MDR, market development rep, SDR, senior SDR, BDR, and then you'll have like a junior AE, senior AE, mid-market AE, sales architect, solutions architect, sales engineer, and then implementation manager, CSM, account manager. Right? If you think about it, to close and manage a $20,000 customer,
Right.
you have like people who are like $500,000 basically to just manage one account, for example. So what it does is it basically creates a very capital inefficient environment. And with AI, what we're seeing is people are getting excited about solving tasks that maybe not require humans, but actually create that like superhuman. And in engineer, I'm an engineer, so I think like one. In engineering, it's like the full stack engineer. The same thing happens with engineering. You have a DevOps guy, you have a front end, back end, junior, senior, all that stuff. But with AI, you can have one good engineer, could be a back end engineer, could be a new engineer, but they can actually become a full stack engineer. They can learn deployment, they can learn doing front end stack, which makes them a very complete person on like and more skilled, and they have varying skills. I think that's like good for them personally in their career and good for companies. I think the same shift started happening in sales where we are seeing, and it's still not there yet, but we're seeing like the full stack seller coming in, which is like one rep could be right out of college, could be a mid-market senior rep, but instead of being an SDR, BDR, and making 150 cold calls a day, which is a mind-numbing job, no one wants to do that. I started my career as in a BDR. I was making $200 a day. I did it for 3 months. I completely burnt out. I was horrible at it. I had a thick Indian accent. Nobody wanted to talk to me, but I was making $200. That was my quota. $200 every single day, and I probably hit one or two people. Back in the day when actually people picked up their phone. So I feel like what's happening is there's a shift happening where people are wanting to not be SDRs and people are not wanting to hire SDRs, and there's a shift happening where now there's a full stack seller happening. So that's the market shift that we're seeing, and that kind of put us in the right place at the right time, right, which is really important. From an AI perspective, there's a couple of things that are happening. One is there's an agentic AI, which we're very excited about, which is basically what it means is it's a fancy word of saying that you go on ChatGPT and you say, find me flights, and it can find you flights. But then you can say, okay, find me flights that are premium economy, United or Alaska, that goes in the morning, lands in the evening. This is my account, go log in, book it for me, send me a calendar invite. After that, all these tasks the agent can do and think about it and do it autonomously or semi-autonomously, where it can think and ask you questions. that's what an agent is. And there's an agent sphere that's happening now. There's OpenAI, and their AI is becoming so good. There's LLMs, with Llama and everything. Their AI is so good that you can use it as agents, and they're not building it yet, right? They might in the future. But what we are doing as engineers and people like us is saying, okay, can we take that base technology and then can we add agentic flows on top of it? Like for us, for a salesperson, it's like, okay, find me decision makers who use Salesforce in financial services industry, 5,000 employees plus in San Francisco. Now I can go scrape the web, I can find good people, I can find their emails, I can do research on every single person, then I can do a campaign on them. I can see when, as soon as they respond on LinkedIn or email, I can then trigger a calendar invite. So it's using these multiple tools and areas and then combining it together, which is now possible with technology that's making this particular thing we're doing possible as of today. That was a long answer, but that's kind of the two areas that we're focused on.
No, it's great, Gaurav. It also gives us a lot of threads of the linen, so to speak, to pull on, which
Yeah.
a turn of phrase that I seem to use a lot. And as you were describing, especially the travel example, I was actually thinking about this relatively recently, like this month, and it was during booking flights,
Yeah.
and
I hate
my
working.
wife was using ChatGPT to sort of
Yeah.
discover, maybe what should we do, or sort of what sort of
Nice.
planning, right, or trajectory. And I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking about, whew, wouldn't it be nice, Laura, to have something like that go the next step?
Sure.
Select, what is the optimal flight, right,
Mm.
based on some function, right, that
Yeah.
obviously includes price and optimizes whatever that trip is, and then go ahead and make that really, really crucial step
Yeah.
book,
Exactly.
and book us. Now, obviously, this relates to sales, and we're absolutely getting there, and exactly what your company does.
Mm-hmm.
But the inverse is really what I was thinking. I was thinking, where of like how bad we are
Yeah.
at
Sure.
like booking flights, like
That's exactly.
obnoxiously bad. Just like how, no offense, but how bad you are at
Yeah.
word as a BDR, and you might have been relatively stellar, but
That's
probably at some point,
sure.
the robot, so to speak, is going to crush you.
That's exactly
We
right.
were all listening in the audience, and turning the ears. You said 200 calls a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
It's an extreme number, and it doesn't
Doesn't
lend
work.
itself to what are, and maybe paradigmatically, and I think we can talk about this, and it maybe even invoke some of the philosophy, right? Which is humans tend to be, or I think want to be, rather heuristic,
Yeah.
somewhat creative. Um, even just breaking down those calls, I would surmise, at least I'll speak for myself, I would try to do everyone differently, almost because
Yeah.
just, I don't know, my brain works that way, and I think most of the audience resonates with this core of
Yeah.
too. We're not robots. We're just like,
That's exactly
hello,
right.
what's your name?
That's
You
exactly right.
state the name, and you sort of almost read from a script. Um, you almost have to almost be, I think, purposely zombie-like to do it. That screams opportunity. I think
That's
that,
it.
you capitalized on. So just to unpack that in sort of your own decision making, because I think we established already in this episode really well, and it's intuitive. People were thinking this, like, man, this would be great to have 5 or 10 years ago, or I don't know, 50 years ago. But
Mhm.
here we are; it's available. But where I was going with that was the success out of the gate. Let's just jump right in that topic, and then move on back to the technology.
Yeah.
Um, Something happened, right? And you got from sort of zero to this 5 million ARR figure really quickly. Can you unpack that for us to sort of explain, you
Yeah.
know, what's behind that? Like, is there a specific aspect of what you're offering that resonates with a particular buyer cohort, or is it something more?
Sure. Yeah, no, what a great question. And so I'll give a quick background about myself too, which kind of leads up to this point. But
Yeah.
Jordan, I grew up in New Delhi. Lost my dad to cancer when I was two. Mom was a blue collar parent, washed utensils door to door. But I was a very nerdy kid. I grew up very poor. Me and my brother were always thinking about like what's next. And we actually had an uncle in sales who did really good for himself. And we were always asking what should we do, and he would say that, hey, in order to be successful now, which I still feel is true, you should learn two things in life. One is coding and one is selling. And I feel like that became like my life. I became a coder. I started coding at 12 years old, built my first video game at 15. And then for my first startup, I joined a startup and I was a cold caller for them because I just wanted to learn sales. And I think you talked about this, and it's so funny that, and I just want to comment on it. I was making $200 a day, and I had an idea. I read Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hours Work Week, and he says about him starting his career as a BDR. I don't know if you remember that.
Hmm.
And he says that what he did was he would call people before 9 a.m. and after 6:30 p.m. And because that's when they would answer the phones. And I was like, man, that's such a great idea. I'm going to start doing that. So I started making fewer dials a day, and I was doing early in the morning before people would go to work, and I would do it later in the evening. I would stay back and do it. But my numbers were not good enough. I was only making like 50 dials instead of 200 dials, and I got fired. So that was horrible, right? If you think about it, because like you said, humans can think outside the box, they can be creative, right? And for these mind-numbing tasks, AI is better, right? Why do you hire humans to do like repetitive work? I think that's the philosophy that's always guided me. So I did my first startup, and which was a moderate success. We bootstrapped it, and we were able to sell it back in India. A company in the U.S. acquired us. Long story short, I came in the U.S. and I started a company which was my first startup here. It is the same company, but we pivoted, as I was telling you. We actually started with a very different idea. Our hypothesis was that we're going to work in the customer service industry. We're going to help customer success. We're going to build a software for not salespeople, but customer success people to retain accounts, manage customer health, predict revenue retention. We worked super hard on it. We even raised some funding. We almost like went from like 0 to 1 very quickly, but this is completely stalled, and we kept trying, nothing was working out. So about 7-8 months ago, I actually went back to my board, Jordan, and I was like, man, nothing's working. We've tried everything. Here's some capital left. We want to return it, and we apologize. We couldn't make it work. And the board was like, okay, what are you going to do if you don't do this? And we were like, look, we had at that time, Jordan, we used to have 6 sellers, and unfortunately, we had to part ways with all of them. So it was back to from a team of like 40, we were down to like 5 people basically. And so it was like founders and early people, and we had built a software internally, which is Jeeva now, where we were just using it to like do mass outreach, right, in a personalized way, still like find good data, like kind of how I reached out to you, right? We were laughing about that, but I used Jeeva to like find you and reach out to your podcast. So if anyone wants to be on Jordan's podcast, I can help you. I
Use
can help you
Jeeva.
use Jeeva to
To
get
access. Please do.
exactly.
Exactly.
So what we did was we basically said we built this internally. It was working really well for us to book meetings, and so we told the board that this is probably what will continue, and they were gracious enough to say, we love you guys, you should keep going. And so in a way, it took us 7 months to get to 5 million, but at the same time, it took us 7 years of like just throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to make something work. And I think this idea just stuck, and this worked. So yeah, that's our story.
Awesome. Yeah, and it also answers the upstream question I meant to ask, and I'll be transparent with you and the audience about it, which was, like this is, contextually, right? Like this audience knows, we talked to Flossie and Miles Beckett, and turns out dental's like a huge opportunity here, and that the natural question was actually more of, how did you end up, focusing on sales? But you described that, and I'll repeat it back to you, right? Certainly, it's interesting and almost kind of comical. You guys internally developed this tool. Really, that was perhaps the golden goose the whole time. But you're just using it yourselves, coincidentally, to try to go sell something else.
I totally agree.
Which we actually hear, and we've I know you're well read. A lot of founders, that's how they kind of stumble upon upon things. But I think there's a direction we can develop that conversation even a little bit more, which I find interesting, which is just how massive that market is. Because I opened this episode right with everybody sells, and I mean literally. I mean, if you're selling, even I don't know, exterior home painting, right? Like we could make up one for us, Gaurav. What's one that we haven't even thought of where there's some element of sales involved? Every trade, that's for sure. Certainly every bit of technology. Your uncle was right. I think we have to concede. That's my point. How big is this market? And then sort of this sort of compound question to ask you that really dives in is, how do you think about sort of deconstructing that, given how just massive the kind of concept of, look, anyone who sells should use Jeeva AI. We're here. How do we get there, Gaurav?
Yeah, well, great question, Jordan. I think a lot about this, and part of me wants to sell to everyone, because I truly believe everyone's in a sales job. One example comes to mind, like you were saying, there's a company called Waste Connections, one of our customers. They're a massive publicly traded company, and they sell these garbage disposals, right? Like that. So think about this industry. they're doing 5 billion in revenue, they have 5,000 plus sellers, and we wouldn't even think about this as like a sales oriented company, or something that sells. And there's everyone's in a sales job. As a founder, I'm trying to sell people to join, investors to invest, right? You're selling people to join the podcast, you're selling like people, like publishers, like there's so much, like everyone's in a sales job no matter what you do. So I feel there's a big community, and one outcome that would be awesome to have, if I can crack, if we can build this into a massive company, I would love to be able to educate everyone about sales, like what is sales, how to do better sales, how to use AI for sales, right, no matter what you sell. But obviously that can be our market. We can't try to sell to everyone. So what we do is we are very focused on companies, like mid-sized companies as of now, that have a small sales team. So we don't work with really large sales teams. We also don't work with just one person trying to sell something out of the garage. I think what the sweet spot for our software has been, where you have some process on sales and you're just trying to do 5x more of that process. So if you have a product market fit, which means you're selling something to a known market and you can only reach 20 people or 50 people a month, then now with Jeeva, you can reach 500 people a month, but in a very personalized way. If you have 3 sellers, instead of you going from 3 to 6 to 9 to 10, you can do like 3x more with those 3 people. So you can probably double sales or triple sales over the next couple of years without actually having more people. So that's like our sweet spot. Like 50-person, 100-person size company has been, like with a small sales team, has been like a really good fit for us. And we're actually very focused on these blue collar industries, like services businesses. So financial services, healthcare services, technology services, you could say mining services. We have like these customers which are not like the Silicon Valley typical companies. And I think I feel the appetite for them is better or bigger, because they're not trying to hire 500 more people, right? They don't have crazy goals or ambitions behind them. They're trying to grow profits by 20%. And if they can do it with their existing staff, that's much better for the owners. And that somehow that's been like a really good sweet spot for us. So that's the market we're going after. But man, wouldn't it be awesome if we can build like a bigger company than Salesforce, where everyone can learn about AI sales? I think that would be the dream.
Yeah, and look, in this world, it's certainly
Possible.
possible. Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you found this niche perhaps by a bit of trial and error, to kind of repeat it back to you. Sounds like to some degree, at least for now, I should say,
Yeah.
largely avoid an enterprise. I'm speculating and guessing, but a lot of that probably has to do with sales cycle, and then also,
Yeah.
you hinted at, sort of the mom and pop, maybe solo practitioner, might be various reasons they might not. But one really key question that we're all wondering is, and we all ask this about AI companies, the pedestrians that we are out here in the audience, me
Sure.
included,
Yeah.
how do you price this
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
Seems like a key question, and
Yeah.
we would just be guessing, but share
Yeah.
more on like how you think about that, Gaurav.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I have 2 answers for you, and I have is like how we price today and how I really want to price in the future, which we're experimenting with. I'll start with like how we price today. It's credits based. I truly believe the seat based model is dead, because you're selling like, in a way we're selling. By the way, we actually have self-serve now, Jordan, where anyone can sign up, $20 a month, right, for that solo practitioner. Not our sweet spot. We're not great at that, but something we just started, so any seller can use it. But from a mid-size, like from a company perspective, Jordan, the way that we charge it is like, let's say if someone pays us $9.99 a month, they get 20,000 credits a month, which they can do actions, they can do the list, they can enrich data, they can do tons of outreach, they can reach many people, they can do LinkedIn automation, they can do inbound automation. There's so much stuff they can do with it, but it's on a credit base, it's an action, because every credit costs us some dollars, some credits cost us more dollars, like if we call an expensive LLM. But some credits are very cheap, like if we just have to find someone's email, we can predict it quickly and we can find someone's email very quickly. So those are cheap actions, but ultimately what we're trying to say is we sell bulk credits. One experiment that we're working with, which we're very excited about, is like outcome-based pricing, which we have about 20 customers on it. They pay us $350 per meeting booked. So it's nothing to do with like how they use it, how much they send, what do they use it for. As long as you can get a booked opportunity, then you pay us $350. And I think that's amazing. We're having some difficulty tracking it. Sometimes we overcharge, sometimes we undercharge customers. We're trying to figure out how we do it. But that's such a no-brainer. Let's say if I came to you and I say, like let's say if you're in a sales job, I'll be like, hey John, for your sales team, right? Like, or sorry, like I'm making an example. If I go to someone, John, I can say like, hey John, like for your sales team, let me go book 20 meetings per month for you, and you only pay me when these guys show up for the meetings, and they're the right ideal customer profile. John's gonna be like, 100%, right? Like, absolutely, I'm all in, right? Why would they say no? So that's something we're experimenting with. We're not there yet, but that's a very popular concept in our industry called outcome-based pricing now, which people are flirting with. They don't know how to use it, but I think that's the future. That's where the world's headed.
Yeah, I think people like that. I mean, everyone likes sort of outcomes or performance basis, whatever. People love to pay for, what they get. And that allows, you just open the door to me where I did want to go, which is sort of uh, just sort of dissecting, right? Or sort of
Sure.
X-raying your own sales process,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it goes back
Totally.
to, your core
All right.
demo, your ideal customer profile, which is pretty broad.
Absolutely.
A
Yeah.
lot of them are, SMEs, and they're not technologists. They're not going to be necessarily, super rehearsed. You
Yeah.
described who some of them are, right?
Yeah.
Finance and perhaps real estate, and
Yeah.
running
Totally.
small business SMEs and so on.
Hmm.
The first thought that comes to mind though is the broad concept of AI. It's met with skepticism. What are those calls that you have
Yeah.
look like? Illuminate that, and what are the objections that you
Yeah.
get? We probably have them all in our minds, and we're all super curious. As we're listening to this episode, we're super
Sure.
curious because we're going to have those same objections too,
Yeah.
as we kind of poke around and look at signing up for Jeeva AI versus maybe something else, or
Sure.
just doing the usual, right? The status quo.
I get
Gaurav.
it. I totally agree, Jordan. So I think this goes back to like one of the questions you asked me before is like, how did we grow super quickly? I think we had like two or three growth hacks that we used that I want to share. And if anyone's starting their journey, one of the things we started doing, Jordan, was we started pitching people in the beginning. Instead of pitching what our product does, we basically just doing feedback calls. So what we would do is we created this email campaign. It was like a 6 email sequence, which was basically like, hey Jordan, saw your latest Grid Daily podcast, right? I'm really impressed by something personalized that I can extract. Obviously, AI can do that for you. ChatGPT can do it. Jiva can do it, or you can manually do it. But we would basically then say like, hey, we built this really cool software called Jiva AI. It's like your AI sales rep, right? And this is what we do. We're not here to pitch you. We just started. Can we show you what we're up to and get your feedback? That was like the first call to action, and this almost like disarmed a lot of our buyers. And we would basically do that because everyone's in the market to see something cool in AI that they haven't seen, and not be pitched to because there's everything's available. The second thing we did, which was a little bit different, is before the call, instead of trying to like show them a demo and like try to like have a really long sales call, like 45 minutes, we literally would make the call 15 minutes. Like it was back to back 15-minute calls where we would basically send them a login ID, like a sign up link. It'd be like, Jordan, would love for you to come in and just play with it, like one night before, so you can give me more feedback on it. Maybe we'll check something, you'll find something exciting. And then what we would do is literally it was one growth hack where so you sign up and it'll say like, hey Jordan, like welcome to Jiva, just your name. And it was like there's no AI behind it, but people found that so delightful. And then we would have quick calls and we would just like show them the product. So it became from like the first initial sale was just like, which is like the anti way of selling, but it was basically like, here's what we've built, would love your feedback. And then what people would do is people were like, this is interesting, but what if it could do this? And we would try to go build it. Basically, we got tons of insights, and then it became so interesting, and the package became so interesting, the demo became interesting, where people were like, is it actually live? Is it in production? We'd be like, yeah, by the way, we have 5 paying users, probably had none or whatever, had one, or like maybe our mom's using it. But we were basically like, yeah, we have 5 paying users, and would love to try this in production. And usually we charge about 3,000 a month, but we'll cut a deal for you. We'll make it $9.99 a month, no brainer, month-to-month pricing. You can try it for your team. So that became like our first few calls. Now that we have a smaller sales team, we have 3 guys we're selling. We basically, when I say guys, like we actually have 2 girls and 1 guy selling, as the sales guys, basically. So what the sales team does, Jordan, is they basically go out and they do a quick discovery on the call. So instead of so we still use like a more feedback approach. We don't do a hard sell. Because it's still like early and learning in the process, but we do like a discovery process, which is like, hey, tell me about your role, what are you focused on? So we try to focus on the problem instead of the solution and the AI problem, and that's what it is. there's a couple of objections that come up. Like on the outreach side, people are very skeptical of like, I don't want to send anything before reviewing it. That's number one. There's
Right.
like some security concerns, like, are you going to hook up my email? You're going to hook up my LinkedIn? What can it do? What can it access? So we have to be
Mhm.
prepared with like security compliances. When we first started, Jordan, there was this thing about like, are you going to train on my data? Like, I don't want that. Like, people would always ask like, how much data are you collecting? Which are your large language models? Like, do you work with ChatGPT? Do you work with Microsoft? What do you do?
Right.
That was like a
Yep.
massive concern. For some reason, this year onwards, it's gone less and less. And the reason I feel is everyone's almost like, oh, I know Alexa listens to me and it's okay. You know, what can I
They
do about
relent.
it? Right?
They
I
relent.
feel like people have just been like, yeah, it's fine. I use ChatGPT every day. I tell ChatGPT about all my problems and and ask for advice on how to be better in my relationship and how to be a better employee or employer. You know, people are now sharing so much they basically just let go of this question. We don't get that often, which is very surprising. So, those are some of the
I would say
objections.
only, yeah, yeah, I'm sure there's others, but the media industry is in a big fight with AI companies. I'm sure you've seen there's at least a couple like headline type of
Yeah,
lawsuits out there on training large language models and all that.
yeah,
But I think it's only because it goes to the heart of the business, right? There's
yeah.
just follow the money, right? Gaurav, for
Yeah,
your sort of everyday person, yes, cat's out of the bag. I
yeah,
think that first came out with sort of the scandals around Facebook. But
mm,
it's interesting that you bring up this
mm,
topic, and it's worth exploring just a tiny bit, and then we can pivot or adjust as needed. But
yeah,
simply, uh, yeah, anecdotally, I'd say the same thing, and maybe in my own thinking, maybe it's not such a bad thing to
mm,
train sort of like local devices on things
sure.
that I'm on. What's your take on that? I mean, you use
Yeah,
devices yourself. They're
yeah.
more and more laden with AI. They're definitely listening to you.
Mm.
In some ways, like you're a customer. Has your thinking evolved? Just like
Yeah,
it sounds like a lot of customers have on this sort of Big Brother's listening to me,
yeah,
AI is listening to me, a concept.
sure. So I have a contrarian take on this,
Hmm.
Jordan. I'm actually not a believer of AI taking my data and training on it,
Mm.
because I don't think the reward is as great as they make it sound. And I'll tell you why. Because one of my first projects when I started my first startup, we would do a lot of reinforced learning, and this is what the concept they use to train like Spotify's algorithms, Netflix's algorithms.
Right.
Just simple example, Spotify, the next best song. I rarely use it. Maybe people use it. Maybe it's great. I've not seen tons of value. Whatever Netflix recommends me after like watching 20 years of Netflix, I feel like it's still not what I want to see next, because
True.
I want to have optionality. I want to choose things. I feel it's the same for most people, right? Like, I don't think you wake up and you're like, let's let's wait for Netflix's next recommendation. You want to get the recommendation from your best friend, or
Right.
what your wife wants to watch, right? Or what your right, or what your family's watching these days. That's kind of what you're interested in, or what your buddies are seeing. I think that's the challenge. I don't think the personalization aspect is enough for it to like take all my data. Like, they have to like learn everything about me and my life choices to basically recommend something. And if it's an ad or like a product, then it's just not worth it. So I feel like this. I don't know why they take so much data. I've not seen value. I feel like the scandals and everything. I bet Facebook has paid billions of dollars now,
I'm
right?
sure.
And trying to like, yeah, suppress all the data they take. And yeah, the Facebook ads are very generic, right? I think the best ads are, if you think about it, as long as they know who I am, where I live, what my job title is, then they can serve a good, appropriate ad for me, whichever platform you're on, right? Like, but I don't think there's anything more you can know about me that will make me want to buy some product. I don't believe it. I don't think AI is there yet. And also the challenge is, when AI was first getting really, really good, Jordan, the whole focus was on reinforced learning. And now reinforced learning is barely used in these kind of like these new outcome-based models or the large language models. Like, that's not the way of like what we're doing. Like, it was all recommendation algorithms was
Mm.
AI, right? Recommendation algorithms was AI. Now it's nothing about recommendation. It's basically finding the next best word, which became ChatGPT and became large language models. So the AI is not going to no. So long story short, no one's working so deeply in this projects anymore. Everyone's working on LLMs. So I don't think it's going to get even any better. So I feel like if I was an AI algorithm company, I'd just be like, I don't want anyone's data. I have the world's internet data, and I'm not going to get into privacy. Kind of like what Grok is doing, right? They were like, we're not going to train on any data from like Elon's new, even though I don't use it every day, but that would be my approach in doing it.
Yeah, interesting take. It is contrarian, and I think food for thought for all of us to consider. Settings wise, and also some of us out there running companies that face that very issue of like, what selectivity and optionality you want to offer or not, around personalized data. It's certainly a real issue, whether that's sort of optically or not. And then I do want to go back to sort of the sales process, and we'll also continue this fun experiment where, in a way, we're inspecting your own and sort of evaluating it from a few different lenses. We found, and we hear this from a lot of folks who sell, a lot of sales experts. Equally important is, after the sale, right? Onboarding, sort of that experience, especially with new
100%.
tools, AI tools among them. And this is, I didn't mention earlier, so and I want to be transparent with you. I signed up for
Okay.
Jeeva AI. I got as far as sort of like, oh, I'll poke at the interface. I haven't gone in depth anymore, but
Sure.
I'm curious to see sort of what happens next. Is there's maybe specific things that maybe I or my team want to do,
Sure.
with it. So unpack that for us, and
Yeah.
especially this audience. They're going to be curious. They're going to hinge on this question too. Uh, or how do you handle that, or think about, once people sign up for something, even if they're
Sure.
not paying the initially or it's
Yeah.
free, you get the idea. But what happens after?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great question, Jordan. We think very deeply about this. Not saying that we're really good at it. We're trying to get good at it. But we think about like a few loops. We call it growth loops. But there was this guy called Sean Ellis who created the term growth hacking, and it's really cool. But it's a funnel. It's called the Pirate Metrics. If you've heard of it, it's called like AAARRR. But it's basically awareness, acquisition, activation. So if someone to learn about us. So if I'm on the podcast, someone is in sales, to listen to it, they'll be like, holy shit, this is awesome. I want to check out Jeeva AI. So now they're aware of Jeeva AI. Before that, no one even knew about us. The next one would be acquisition. Is sign up easy enough? Can they sign up? Can they get in? The next step would be activation. Can they actually get forced value? So we've built it like ChatGPT, where it's like a search bar where you can go in and say, find me John's email, right? Or whatever, right? Create some email for me, scrape this LinkedIn profile for me. Some simple task, and we're trying to add tons of tasks and tools behind it. So AI would be able to do anything that ChatGPT can't yet in like a couple of steps. So there's obviously recommendation like find decision makers in Pepsi, and stuff like that. So some quick aha, that's like number one. After that, it takes obviously much more work to get the team activated and stuff like that. But then the loops basically become that you have to focus on revenue, retention, and referral, right? So revenue would be like we give you enough value that you actually want to pay us, whether it's $20 or $3,000 per month for a company. And then it would be retention, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? It's like, are you guys actually in it, using it? Are the sellers actually finding value? They're getting leads. What we've seen is, as soon as someone books their first meeting, they're hooked for life. So we focus religiously on it. We're like, man, if you signed up and you paid us $20, man, I would be calling you. My team would be like on you until you get your first appointment, first booking as a seller. We would bother you. Like we would literally manually message you. We'll show up at your door, whatever we need to do to get you to the first meeting, because that's like the big aha for anyone. After that, it's like referral loops, which we haven't worked on much, but that was one of the reasons of us driving a lot of traffic, is because there's novelty, there's word of mouth. So we basically told our customers, it's like, hey, you'll get 500 more credits. First, we tried gift cards and we didn't get anything. Then we were like, we'll give you 500 credits. The person who signs up gets 500 free credits. Please refer us. We'd love your help. And I think that was awesome. I think that was like a big referral loop that we tried, and it's working very well for us. It still works for us.
Yeah, and especially on that note with referrals, it sounds like, you're pairing that reward, which is the 500
Yeah,
credits, with maybe some of your most fervent users, in
exactly.
contrast to the gift cards,
Yeah,
you experimented with. And we hear that a lot in that sort of referral, looking at that sort of referral portion of a sales
yeah,
process, and follow-ups, and how do you acquire that next or
yeah,
proximate customer.
mm,
Yeah, it seems to be, we hear this a lot, almost the most feverish or
yeah,
high frequency users. They're
yeah.
the ones who, what do they want? They don't even want money. They want more of whatever it is that they're using, because that's what's
That's
most
exactly
valuable
right.
to them. It sounds like you found that that sort of product market fit. And I have one more
Yeah.
question, and then we'll sort of get into some good admin stuff, how people can reach you, and the URL and all this other the goodies. And
Totally.
we'll encourage some comments on YouTube.
I love it.
After that, we won't forget
Yeah.
Gaurav. But it was about the ideal sort of customer profile, and I think this is important. People are listening, and they're not totally sure
Sure.
if they're exactly who you're looking for, because oftentimes
Mm.
people hear, listen through a whole podcast episode like this, and that's awesome. And there's a little bit
Yeah.
of uncertainty. They're like, well, everyone's rowing the same boat. A lot of these people run businesses. They also want to make sure that they're a fit. Is there a particular sort of
Yeah.
price point of the sale, right? Like of
Yeah.
what they sell, right? They might sell,
Great
widgets.
question. Great
Make sure
question.
it's not like 50
Yeah.
cents is their average sale receipt,
Yeah.
right? Let's say, or
Absolutely.
something that's big ticket. Maybe it's not ideal, or maybe it is. Can you give us sort of what that looks like from your own profile standpoint?
That's such an awesome question, Gordon. I love how you phrase it. That is very insightful. The best sweet spot for us is companies or people that are selling software or products, whatever that is, from $10,000 to $100,000 in annual value. So it could be anything from 20, 50, 80, whatever that value is, but $250,000 is probably too big. You don't need a software like this. You should be calling the contacts you have personally without AI. I think that would be much better because you have fewer volume. Someone who's selling like $200, $300, $400 a month kind of contract, it's a high volume game, right? Again, AI gets faltered. It can be used for it, but it's not as good. So mid-size is like our sweet spot. Mid-size deals, if you're selling that, is like what we go after, and or not what we go after, but the companies that have been most successful are selling like somewhere within that range is very good for us.
Okay, yeah, and so to break that down even more, because a lot of the software folks that are listening, even in finance and so on, they're often selling some introductory product. It might be like $100 a month, but as
Sure.
long as cumulatively
Of
that's,
course. Yeah, there's a
what,
bigger deal, and
yeah, they're sort of maybe even lifetime value they're thinking about.
I agree.
That number, that's the number that you want people to focus on. And if that's
That's
north
great.
of, sounds like, did I hear 20K and up to 250?
Yeah,
Anywhere in there from like a lifetime value, they
that's
might
correct.
they
That would be
might be
perfect.
considering or thinking about their own clients.
That's exactly
They
right.
should get in touch. Definitely at least check this out, or at least
Yeah,
experiment with sort of free version. So we'll dig right into that. We'll encourage people over. It's Jeeva AI. That's
that's right.
JEE. So double E there, everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
VA.ai. I got that right, Gaurav. Right?
That's perfect. Thank you, Jordan. You
Jiva,
got it.
Jiva with a J. And if you want to reach Gaurav directly, how do
Yeah,
if people want to reach out to you, maybe they want to work with you, maybe they got
sure.
money for you, they
Yeah,
want to lend it to you, or just
I'll take it.
equity, sell some
Sure.
equity, as they say, sell some
Yeah.
securities. Uh, who knows what people, but a lot of people are interested in so many different things. They want to work with you guys. How can they reach you, Gaurav? What's the best way?
Totally. And we are hiring a bunch. So please,
Okay.
if people are looking for jobs, students or early in their career too, we work with a lot of entrepreneurial like people. We're hiring across marketing. As I was telling Jordan, we don't have a marketing team yet, so we're trying to build one now. I think that's like, and then obviously looking for great engineers all the time. My email is g@jeeva.ai. So it's G, just super simple. It's the letter G at jeeva.ai. And I look at every email, I answer every email. You can also search, my name is kind of long, but if you want to copy paste it from here, put it on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so very easy to find. I respond to every single message. So please reach out. Would love to talk about anything AI.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, we'll ask Spencer. I'll ask him right live in the episode. Spencer, maybe add Gaurav's
As an email.
LinkedIn
Oh, perfect.
into the article.
That'd be great.
Into the article. But yeah, so for all you listeners out there, that wraps up this episode. Super interesting one. Lovely talking with Gaurav. You can listen to this on your favorite listening devices. Certainly across Spotify. Shout out to Spotify. We mentioned that earlier in this episode. Apple Podcasts, or sort of I think a dozen other channels that we're on at this point. You'll see the article version of this on Grit Daily, gritdaily.com, and of course for all those iPhone, Mac, and other users, you'll get the notification or prompt in Apple News, which brings us hundreds of millions of readers on there. That's how everyone seems to be getting their news nowadays. Gaurav, they've been an awesome partner for us here at Grit Daily Group as well, so we'll check it out there. But I have the time, so I'll just give you the last word, Gaurav, for
Sure.
everyone. Last word goes to you.
Oh,
Final takeaways for this episode for people to consider or ponder.
okay. Just one word?
No.
Or
It can be.
okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's a phrase to describe.
Okay. Sure.
You can give us a paragraph, perhaps.
Yeah. Maybe the thing we were discussing pre-episode, which maybe I'll talk about that. Um, I read this somewhere and I truly believe it. It's not AI that's going to take your job, but person who is using AI might. And the other concept or the deeper thought behind this is I was talking about Jack Altman, who's one of our investors. Sam's brother. Sam is at CEO of OpenAI. He had this saying once. We were in a small room with him and some of his companies that he's invested in, some startup guys, and he said that there's only two companies that he wants to invest in. One is like a startup founder who's in AI 24/7. Like they're using AI, they're in AI, they're doing everything with AI. Or someone who's like far removed away from AI, right? They're either like farmer, painter, they're building something that has nothing to do with AI, and society needs it. I think those are the two paths of being very, very successful right now. So for people who are dabbling with AI, I would say just immerse yourself, learn new tools, learn new skills. You're going to be immensely valuable for wherever you work, for your own companies, for other companies. Everyone wants skilled people who are dabbling with AI. It's such an easy job interview right now if you do that truly. And if not, then be far away from AI. Like don't be in the middle. That would be like my final takeaway for
Yeah.
the listeners today.
Yeah, we hear it. That's right. Appreciate that, Gaurav, and people are listening. Certainly, don't be crushed in the middle. That's for sure. Farmers safe out there. The dog walkers,
Yes,
perhaps,
the job
their
market.
jobs are safe for now
Electricians,
until the
HVAC,
yeah, until
right?
all the hardware shows up. But even then, that personal touch is awesome. Well, thanks a lot for joining us,
Thank
and
you.
for everyone out there listening. Uh, do hit up Gaurav, and I said I would include another comment on this. Do comment on the YouTube videos. Give us your
Yeah.
most terse, trite, perhaps trolling commentaries you like. Gaurav and I would certainly welcome it. Whatever you have to share, question and ask
100%.
away. But for everyone else out there, until next time, thank you.
Thank you.